The Bhagavad Gita teaches that anger does not begin at the moment we raise our voice or lose control. The process starts much earlier when the mind repeatedly returns to the same thought. The more we dwell on something, the more attached we become to it, and from attachment becomes desire. Yogananda explained that the danger is not simply wanting something, but in becoming inwardly dependent on a particular outcome. We no longer merely prefer to win, to be respected, to be understood, or to have another person behave in a certain way. Somewhere inside, we begin to demand it. Preference becomes an expectation, and the expectation slowly turns into the belief that this is how things should be. When reality refuses to follow that picture, frustration begins to rise. And if we remain identified with that frustration, it eventually becomes anger. I can see this pattern clearly in my own childhood. When I played football with my sister and my friend, they often told me that I could not stand losing. And at the time they were right, but their words hurt me and I immediately rejected them. I probably believed that everyone disliked losing, so why were they pointing at me? Looking back, I understand that the difference was not simply that I wanted to win. Winning had become connected to my pride and to the image I held of myself. Losing did not feel like one game had gone badly. It felt personal. This is what attachment does. It turns a simple event into a challenge to our identity. This explanation helped me see that the entire sequence can unfold incredibly fast. Someone criticizes us, and within seconds we become attached to being seen as competent, respected, or right. We want the other person to understand us or to stop challenging us. And when that does not happen, frustration rises. From the outside, it may look as though one sentence caused the anger, but the sentence was only the trigger. The deeper process was already unfolding in the mind. This is why controlling only the final reaction is rarely enough. By the time anger is fully present, we are already near the end of the chain. The real opportunity comes earlier when we ask ourselves what thought we have been feeding, what result we have become attached to, and what part of our pride or identity feels threatened. These are uncomfortable questions because they return responsibility back to us. It is easier to say that another person made us angry, and sometimes their behavior may genuinely be unfair or harmful. The deeper invitation is to examine why that event had such power over our inner state. What did I believe I was losing? Respect, control, love, recognition, or the feeling of being right. Anger is not the final stage of the problem. Anger leads to delusion. Delusion disturbs memory. And when memory becomes confused, our power of discrimination begins to collapse. This is a temporary loss of contact with our higher intelligence, with our true self. We may still believe we are thinking clearly, but in reality, we are seeing everything through the narrow lens of wounded pride, fear, frustration, and desire. I experienced this very strongly when I was younger. During one argument, everything seemed to go dark for a brief moment. I had enough awareness to ask my girlfriend to leave the room, but after she left, I smashed several objects, including my computer. At that time, I knew something was wrong. I never crossed the line into physical violence against other persons, and I'm deeply grateful for that. But inside me, there was always something which was triggering me to anger and to hatred, and I cannot even explain what was happening inside me. In those moments, the mind does not carefully consider consequences. It looks only for immediate release. That is why people often say things that do not reflect their real values, destroy relationships they care about, or make decisions they regret almost immediately. This is not simply a lack of discipline. This is a loss of inner calmness and clarity. The person is still there, but for a moment, the wiser part of the mind is no longer leading. This is also why shame after an outburst rarely solves the problem. Shame focuses on what we did, but not on the chain that brought us there. The more useful question is not why am I such an angry person, but at what point did I stop seeing clearly? Sometimes it was when pride was wounded. Sometimes when a desire became a demand. Sometimes when fear was hidden beneath the anger. The important point is that the exposition is only the final visible moment. The loss of judgment begins earlier, and the earlier we learn to recognize it, the more chance we have to step back before anger takes control. At this point, an important question appears. Does this mean that all anger is wrong? Does spiritual growth require us to become passive, agreeable, and silent whenever something harmful happens? We have to make a very important distinction here. We have to separate anger that comes from the ego from what may be called righteous anger. Ego anger arises when your pride is wounded, our desire is frustrated, or our sense of control is threatened. It is personal. It wants to punish, defeat, humiliate, or release pressure. Even when it uses the language of justice, there is often resentment underneath. Righteous anger is different. It may appear strong on the outside, but inwardly it is not driven by hatred. It can control injustice, protect someone vulnerable, establish a boundary, or correct destructive behavior while remaining guided by wisdom. This distinction is not always easy to recognize because the external expression may look similar. A person may speak firmly in both cases. The difference lies in the inner state. Ego anger leaves the mind agitated and often produces regret. Righteous action remain connected to the discrimination. It does not seek revenge, it seeks what is right. This was important for me because I did not want spiritual teachings to become another form of suppression. I did not want to pretend that nothing disturbed me or that every conflict should be avoided. The goal is not to become a man who never feels force, intensity, or moral courage. The goal is to remove hatred, wounded pride, and personal vengeance from the force. Sometimes love is gentle and sometimes love must be firm. But firmness without inner balance quickly becomes aggression. We have to examine the motive. I'm speaking because something needs to be said or because I want the other person to feel my pain. Am I setting a boundary or am I trying to punish? Am I protecting what is right or defending my ego? These questions can reveal the difference. Righteous anger does not destroy discrimination. Ego, danger does. This is why inner clarity matters more than outward appearance. For many years, I believed that becoming a better man meant controlling the explosion. Today, I believe the real work begins much earlier. It begins with the thought we continue to feed, the attachment we refuse to question, and the expectation we turn into a demand. Anger is not an isolated emotion, it is a part of sequence. We have to understand that the way out of the sequence is not suppression, but awareness, discrimination, non attachment, and inner calm. I still experience frustration sometimes. I still have moments when pride is touched or when life does not move in the direction I hoped. The difference is that I now try to recognize the change before it reaches its final stage. Instead of asking only, how do I stop being angry? I ask, what have I become attached to? And why have I allowed this situation to control my peace? That question brings responsibility back to me, but it also gives me freedom, because if the source of the reaction is only outside me, I remain powerless. But if I can see what is happening within my own mind, I can begin to change it. Anger is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is a messenger. It shows us where we fear, pride, desire, or attachment is still hidden. And when we are willing to look honestly, the same emotion that once controlling us can become the beginning of greater awareness. The Bhagavad Gita did not teach me how to suppress my anger. It taught me to understand it. And once I began to understand it, I slowly discovered something even more valuable than emotional control. I discovered a little more inner freedom.